The Malfoy name resonates with power and privilege in the wizarding world. Their history is steeped in pure blood ideology, a belief system that elevates magical heritage above all else. This wasn't just snobbery, it was the foundation of their identity. For centuries, the Malfoys cultivated influence. They amassed wealth and political connections, often aligning themselves with those in power. Their manor, a symbol of their status, stood as a testament to their enduring legacy. Their pureblood status wasn't merely a fact, it was a weapon. It was used to assert dominance and look down upon those deemed inferior, particularly Muggle-borns. This ingrained prejudice was passed down through generations. The family tree is intertwined with other prominent pure bloodlines. The most notable connection is to the infamous Black family, sharing blood with figures like Bellatrix Lestrange and Sirius Black. This lineage reinforced their position within the pureblood elite. This connection wasn't just about blood, it was about shared values and alliances. The Blacks, like the Malfoys, often gravitated towards the darker aspects of the wizarding world, valuing power and purity above compassion or equality. Their ancestral ties to the House of Slytherin are equally significant. Slytherin House values ambition, cunning, and resourcefulness, traits the Malfoys embodied and instilled. This house affiliation wasn't a coincidence, it was a destiny. Being sorted into Slytherin was almost a foregone conclusion for a Malfoy. It was where their family legacy resided, where their connections were strongest, and where the values they were raised with were celebrated. It was their birthright and their burden. The Malfoy family history isn't just background, it's the bedrock upon which Draco's character is built. Understanding their past is crucial to understanding his present actions and motivations. It explains the world he was born into. This world was one of strict social hierarchy and unwavering expectations. Draco wasn't just a child, he was the heir to a powerful prejudiced dynasty. His identity was intrinsically linked to his family's history and reputation. The weight of this legacy pressed down on him from birth. He was expected to uphold the family name, maintain their status, and adhere to their pureblood principles without question. Deviation was not an option. Analyzing the Malfoy lineage reveals the systemic nature of prejudice in the wizarding world. It wasn't just individual hatred, it was a cultural institution passed down through families like the Malfoys, shaping generations. Their history serves as a microcosm of the pureblood problem. It highlights how power, wealth, and tradition can be used to perpetuate harmful ideologies and create a rigid, discriminatory society. Draco's early life was steeped in this environment. He was a product of his family's history, raised to believe in their superiority and the inferiority of others. This upbringing was the primary architect of his initial worldview. Draco's childhood was one of privilege and isolation. Raised in the grandeur of Malfoy Manor, he was shielded from the wider wizarding world, interacting primarily with those who shared his family's status and beliefs. This limited exposure shaped his perspective. His early interactions were likely curated. Playmates would have been from similar pureblood families, reinforcing the insular nature of his upbringing. He learned early who was acceptable and who was not. The concept of pureblood superiority wasn't taught as an opinion, it was presented as fact. It was woven into everyday conversations, lessons, and expectations. It was the air he breathed. This conditioning began almost from infancy. He would have heard derogatory terms for Muggle-borns and blood traitors long before he understood their full meaning. These words became normalized. His parents, particularly Lucius, were the primary architects of this conditioning. They instilled in him their values, their prejudices, and their ambitions. Draco was molded in their image. He was taught that the Malfoy name commanded respect, even fear. He learned that wealth and influence could open doors and solve problems. He was shown that power was the ultimate goal. This upbringing fostered a sense of entitlement. Draco expected to be treated with deference and believed he was inherently better than others based solely on his blood status. This manifested as arrogance. His early interactions at Hogwarts, particularly with Harry Potter, highlight this conditioning. He immediately sought to establish dominance based on his family name and wealth, expecting Harry to be impressed. The rejection from Harry was a shock. It challenged the fundamental belief system he had been raised with, that the Malfoy name guaranteed respect and admiration. This early conflict was formative. This dependence on his family's authority prevented him from developing genuine confidence. His bravado was often a facade, masking insecurity rooted in the pressure to live up to the Malfoy name. The pureblood culture he grew up in was rigid and unforgiving. There was little room for independent thought or deviation from the established norms. Conformity was paramount. This environment stifled empathy. He was taught to view those outside his circle with suspicion or contempt, making it difficult for him to connect with or understand people from different backgrounds. His early life wasn't just about learning prejudice, it was about internalizing it. It became a part of his identity, a lens through which he viewed the entire world. This was the foundation of his character. Analyzing this period is crucial for understanding his later actions. His initial cruelty and arrogance weren't random. They were the direct result of a specific, deliberate upbringing designed to perpetuate pure-blood dominance. He was a product of his environment, a young boy burdened by centuries of family history and expectation. His early life wasn't entirely his own. It was dictated by the legacy he was born into. Lucius Malfoy's influence on Draco cannot be overstated. As the patriarch, Lucius embodied the Malfoy ideals: pure-blood supremacy, political maneuvering, and unwavering loyalty to the Dark Lord. Albeit often self-serving, he was Draco's primary role model. Lucius was a demanding and often cold father. His affection seemed conditional, tied to Draco upholding the family name and adhering to his father's expectations. This created a dynamic of seeking approval. He introduced Draco to the darker aspects of the wizarding world early on. Draco would have witnessed his father's involvement with Death Eaters and heard his father's views on Voldemort's return. This wasn't hidden from him. Lucius's own history as a Death Eater cast a long shadow. It meant Draco was raised in a household where loyalty to Voldemort was, at times, a tangible presence, even if Voldemort was initially gone. Lucius's fall from grace after the Ministry of Magic incident deeply impacted Draco. Seeing his father imprisoned and the family name tarnished was a blow to everything Draco had been taught to value. This event likely instilled fear in Draco. He saw the consequences of failure and the potential for their privileged world to crumble. It added another layer of pressure to succeed and restore the family's honor. When Voldemort returned, Lucius's position became even more precarious. His failure at the Ministry meant he had to work harder to regain the Dark Lord's favor, and this pressure extended to Draco. Lucius pushed Draco towards the Death Eaters. He saw it as the only path to power and security in the new regime. He wanted Draco to follow in his footsteps, ensuring the Malfoy legacy continued under Voldemort. This pressure was immense. Draco was still a teenager, yet he was being pushed into a world of violence, fear, and absolute loyalty to a terrifying figure. His father was guiding him down a dark path. The analytical perspective here highlights the cyclical nature of abuse and expectation. Lucius, shaped by his own upbringing and loyalty to Voldemort, was perpetuating the same system onto his son. Draco's fear of disappointing his father was a powerful motivator. He craved Lucius's approval and validation, even as he began to question the path he was being forced onto. Lucius's influence wasn't just about ideology, it was about control. He dictated Draco's choices, his friendships, and his future, leaving little room for Draco to forge his own identity. The burden of his father's legacy and his father's failures weighed heavily on Draco. He was expected to succeed where Lucius had faltered, to prove the Malfoys were still valuable to the Dark Lord. Analyzing Lucius's impact reveals the tragic element of Draco's story. He was a young man trapped by his father's choices and expectations, forced into a role he was not emotionally equipped to handle. The shadow of Lucius Malfoy is ever present in Draco's journey. It represents the force that pushed him towards darkness, the source of much of his early prejudice, and the primary obstacle to his potential redemption. The Malfoy family's association with the dark arts was not merely theoretical, it was practical. Lucius was a known practitioner, and the family likely possessed dark artifacts and knowledge. This environment normalized dark magic for Draco. He would have grown up seeing dark magic used or discussed. It wasn't presented as inherently evil, but rather as a tool for power and control, a means to achieve their goals. The expectation to potentially learn and utilize dark magic was likely implicit. As the heir, he would need all the tools available to maintain the family's position. and dark magic was part of that arsenal. When Voldemort returned, the family's connection to the dark arts became explicit and mandatory. Loyalty was proven through action, and action often involved dark magic and violence. Draco's initiation into the Death Eaters marked a significant turning point. Receiving the Dark Mark wasn't just a symbol, it was a physical manifestation of his commitment to Voldemort and the dark side. This act was likely terrifying for a 16-year-old. It signified a point of no return, binding him to a cause he was increasingly unsure about. The mark was a constant burning reminder of his new reality. Being tasked with killing Dumbledore was the ultimate test of his loyalty and his capacity for dark deeds. It was a mission designed to force him to fully embrace the dark arts and shed any remaining innocence. This task was beyond his capabilities, both magically and emotionally. He was skilled but not a killer. The weight of the mission crushed him, revealing the gap between his pure-blood posturing and his true nature. His attempts to complete the mission involved using dark magic and curses, but his hesitation was palpable. He couldn't bring himself to commit the final, irreversible act. This failure was a form of success for his character. The analytical view here sees the Dark Mark and the mission as catalysts. They forced Draco to confront the reality of the path his family had chosen, and his own limitations within that path. His exposure to the true horror of the dark arts, not just the theoretical power, began to chip away at his conditioning. He saw the cruelty, the fear, and the lack of humanity required. The contrast between the power his family sought through dark magic and the personal cost it demanded became clear. He was paying a heavy price for his family's ambition. His inability to kill Dumbledore wasn't just a failure of nerve, it was a moral stand, however reluctant. It showed that the dark conditioning hadn't completely extinguished his capacity for hesitation and perhaps empathy. The dark arts, intended to empower him, instead became a source of torment. The mark burned, the mission weighed on him, and the reality of being a Death Eater was far from the glorious image his father might have painted. This period is crucial for understanding his internal conflict. He was caught between the dark path dictated by his family and his own burgeoning realization that he was not cut out for it. The dark arts, the symbol of his family's power, and his forced destiny, ultimately became the very thing that pushed him towards questioning that destiny. It was a dark education that led to a glimmer of light.